course. Oh, yeah, no, actually, I could do this. Whoop, there we go. Yeah, this week we're talking about Djesse, Volume 3.
Just Djesse.
It's just
Yeah.
Djesse? Why is there a D?
Yeah. I like Django.
Okay, Djesse, Volume 3. By Jacob Collier.
Yeah.
Sam selected it this week. If you watched last week's episode, the Thundercat one, we discussed it a little bit. So this is just a good, next option. Okay, the sun is moving.
Yeah.
Let's go to the other side.
Yeah. It came up as sort of a contrast in that, Jacob Collier and Thundercat are both really talented instrumentalists and arrangers. And Jacob has kind of been historically known for like maximalism in the harmony section. And admittedly, that isn't totally gone in Volume 3, but I remember the first time I listened to it, noticing that he was exercising a lot more restraint in terms of what was happening in the background, and kind of allowing the melody lines and the more or single lines that were admittedly very, very agile, to say the least, to occupy attention, while everything in the background was a little more locked into a groove, a little more consistent. And by contrast, Thundercats, It Is What It Is, used pretty simple melody lines and had this super lush but not overwrought at all sound stuff occurring in the background. So, which admittedly I haven't been exposed to a bunch of the rest of Thundercat's work, but it was interesting seeing two very, very, very competent jazz, soul, whatever genres, composers kind of taking opposite approaches and still both succeeding in making something that is accessible to a mainstream audience, while also not compromising on any of the, and still fully utilizing their skill set. Really, it doesn't really feel like they're holding back. They're just getting a little more surgical.
Yeah. That's a good take. I thought this album was interesting. I haven't listened.
I guess covers why I picked it.
Yeah, I haven't listened to a lot of Jacob Collier.
I seem to have lost your sound.
Oh. Oops, I was muted because of the dog. I don't want to distract you. The stream could still hear the dog, but I don't want to distract you. I haven't listened to a lot of Jacob Collier. So I don't have a huge reference point for, like, all of the music. But I thought this album was interesting. This album was, like, it won awards or something, right? Or was it a previous album?
It was nominated for Album of the Year. It looks like it didn't win it, but...
Yeah. No, there's...
This album was nominated for Album of the Year.
Like Grammy Album of the Year? Yeah, there's, like... Okay, I'll say this. Mm-hmm. An album like this will never win Album of the Year. Because Album of the Year always goes to, like, some big act. You know what I'm saying? Not that Jacob Collier isn't big, but he's not mega star. You know what I'm saying? Like...
Yeah.
It's so rare that Album of the Year goes to someone who isn't sort of being pushed. Because you know how those award shows go and stuff, They send them gifts and...
Yeah.
Yeah. So, But the fact that it was even nominated is pretty incredible.
Yeah. And I think he has one for jazz record. I think it was In My Room.
Mm.
Kind of his first major offering, because he's people who know him will know he kind of started out on YouTube doing a lot of arranging stuff, reharmonization type things, and then I think In My Room won a Grammy for best jazz record. I'm not certain though. I'm checking that now.
While you're checking
Okay,
that.
no, evidently I am full of it.
Oh, okay. But you know, YouTube to Grammys, that's the dream, right? That is, you know, a few people have done it. Justin Bieber.
He won for best arrangement. Yeah, he's won best arrangement like
Best
4 times. Yeah, and he's been nominated for Album of the Year for Djesse Volume 3, best R&B performance in All I Need, and best arrangement again, and He Won't Hold You. So.
Yeah.
Forgot best arrangement was even a category.
Because, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of categories that people don't even pay attention to, especially like behind the scenes stuff like arrangement. Like, there's like people, like, there's like best engineer, right? That's like a category, but like, could you name one person? You know what I'm saying? Like, nah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, yeah, I mean, you would say, would you say, I should say, would you say Jacob Collier's been sort of a golden boy in a lot of online circles of people who are into, you know, like microtonal music or you know, just stuff like that, because he has
for
this
like massive
incredible
music
ear.
nerds.
Yeah. Basically. Music composition nerds.
Yeah.
People who like
Yeah.
music theory and stuff like that nerds.
Yeah. I think, you know, looking at interviews with him, you know, again, the guy's harmony brain is absolutely insane, but I think what is kind of impressive about his approach, right, is again, he has this incredible harmony brain, but he does like an excellent job of writing so much based on feeling, even when he's using all of these odd meters and polyrhythms, that it kind of smuggles all the strange stuff in. Like, you can still groove along to all of his music, even though there's all of this, you know, all of these interesting musical ideas being introduced. And I think that's what part of what has earned him the golden boy status to a certain extent, right? Like, All I Need, which again was nominated for best R&B performance, I think, you know, made a bigger splash in his general following than it did like everywhere else, obviously. But like, that's working with people who've done, you know, kind of pop singing, or, you know, art pop singing, I guess.
Right.
But it modulates between tunings of A. Like, if I'm remembering correctly, if I'm remembering all of the people pointing stuff out about it when he was doing his whole Instagram release thing and like putting a bunch of people's reactions to it up on stories. And that's a trick that he uses a lot. He in my room, in the album In My Room, I think the song Hideaway specifically, he's moving into progressively higher tunings of A, based on just the overall feeling that those tunings tend to elicit open versus closed, and dark versus light.
Yeah. It's definitely, I definitely agree. Like, I could play this kind of music, to like just like a random friend or whatever, and they wouldn't be like, "Oh, what is this weird, harmonic shit?" Right? Like some music that has like odd harmonies and stuff, might turn people off.
Yeah.
And part of the reason definitely is because sometimes it goes so fast, unless you're listening for it, you don't even notice it. Um, and sometimes it's just snuck in there in a clever way where,
Yeah.
you know, you wouldn't necessarily notice unless you're listening for it. Another thing that you mentioned last week that definitely applies to this album, is the having a pretty simple vocal line that's like you can sing along with, that you can focus on while more complex things are happening in the background. Definitely, that's like the entire album for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I do think he pivoted a little bit, though. Again, compared to his previous stuff. Like here, we are getting more, at least stuff that a lot of the vocal lines, a decent number of them, the stuff you can sing along with, nod your head along with. But like the performances themselves, like if you were trying to sing it like word for word, note for note, would be quite difficult in many cases.
Sure, yeah.
Because he collaborated with a ton of insanely good singers.
Yeah.
And again, he can do those rapid note runs.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of. I can hear it in my head. The do 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 do. Yeah, no, it definitely, and again, it's like kind of just like put in there as a transition. Oh, there's this rapid note run, and then it goes to a more simple melody, right? And it's just like, oh, okay, we're putting it in there, we're sneaking it in there. I both like it, and I dislike it. I think I need to listen to more of his old stuff to understand more of the depth, because there were times when this felt very simple. It felt very commercial. But there was that hint of like other things in there.
And even in the places where like timbrally and in terms of like lyrical content, he's clearly going for more of a pop, like lightly electronic music influenced and approach. Like it's still like there are interesting rhythms happening in the background. Like he's not sticking with like a 4/4 grid quite as well, and the way the phrases are. It's interesting because if you sit there and try and count along 4/4, even on these tracks that feel more in the pop sphere, like he's still breaking up ideas and using lengthening and shortening phrases and plugging them all together in a way that it's easy not to notice that it's happening, but it's still he's very good at being deceptive with how much he pushes the envelope.
Right.
In terms of what we're used to hearing, at least.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. I definitely would be curious to hear, what other people would have to say about this album. I don't know. Maybe we'll have to come back to some Jacob Collier stuff at some point when there are more than just two of us. I could tell you, Brian probably would have mildly disliked this album, I think. I don't know.
Yeah, just for borrowing the pop vocab.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, and definitely in like theme. I mean, the album's about like what, like love lost and longing and you know, sort of that the melancholy of you're up late at night thinking about a partner that you had at one point in time, you know.
Yeah, or in some cases, just about extricating oneself from a relationship that's not working anymore. Right? The compromises that one makes. There are a lot of. I think. It's refreshing. Again, I don't really listen to a lot of love songs generally, so it's possible that I've been missing how well the average love song's unpacking of relationships has evolved. But in general, you don't. My feeling is that you don't see a lot of songs that really unpack like the messier, more like tangled and psychologically compromised facets of relationship. Right? They're usually a little more simplified. It's like if it's a breakup song, it's you suck.
Right. Yeah, I hate you. You suck. Yeah,
you were just holding me. You were holding me down. Right? And he does a bit of that, but he it feels like a more honest unpacking of the aftermath of a relationship rather than the kind of hyper-polarized, right? Which is neat to me. It feels less sanitized.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, I don't think that it's necessarily unique to him, but it's definitely less common than just, especially with pop music, or like pop music. I wouldn't.
Yeah, no, like, don't get me wrong. There's plenty of art pop that is very good at kind of honest unpackings. I'm not pretending that he's alone in doing that. But...
Right. Yeah, and there are other genres. I mean, there are so many. There's so much music in the world. We can only compare it to the things that we've heard. And I think this has nothing necessarily to do with Jacob Collier, although I think that he's a good person to reference this on because of his sort of dynamic range. Not dynamic range as in actual dynamics, but his range being so dynamic, his range of being able to do different things, play different instruments and stuff like that. The train. I like had a tangent and then I like sidetracked myself to justify the tangent and then I lost where I was going.
That's how it works. Yeah, I guess for me this is just like a super. I realize the kind of almost monotone I've been delivering most of my thoughts about this in kind of it belies just how much I love this album. And believe me, as a composer only slightly younger than Jacob Collier, there is a decent portion of my brain that does not want me to like Jacob Collier because he's so fucking good at composition.
Right. It's like seeing the Chinese 12-year-old on Instagram.
For so long.
It's like seeing the Chinese 12-year-old on Instagram that can play guitar better than you'll ever be able to play it, and you hate that kid even though you know that they're good.
Yeah.
Sorry. Continue.
And no, not at all. So like, there's this intense desire to like, totally ego-driven desire to like pick it apart and find areas where, despite his competence as an arranger and a composer, things fall flat. But like, I think hopefully it's a good sign that I've kind of gotten over my like perceived rivalry with him to a certain extent. I no longer feel like I have to compare
your
my own
parasocial
work to what
rivalry.
he's capable of. Yeah, and so I'm much more capable of enjoying his music now. I can't not like this album. There's just so much cool stuff going on. So many fucking like so much use of like quintuplet swing, drunk beats, just generally loose, organic timing, and lush fucking chords. Like it's there aren't many albums where I hear like a single chord that gets reused multiple times and I'm like, I'm gonna have to sit down and figure out what the fuck that chord is later. But the one it's on Time Alone with You, the big vocal chord singing the line Time Alone with You is just
So that reminded me of something, actually.
Such a tasty chord.
And it was a note that I didn't take down, but it was something that I definitely thought. I like his odd chords and stuff, and his more complex chords, I should say. Better, I don't remember which song it was, it might have been Time Alone with You, when it was more choral. It was a lot of voices harmonizing the chords, as opposed to just like a piano. I think it sounds way better like that. And I think partially it's because I'm biased because I used to be in a choir in high school and we did some like Eric Whitacre pieces, and that's like his whole thing is like the complex harmonies, and I remember loving those pieces so much, and I think it took me back to that a little bit. But like it also like, I don't know, like I think that human voice blending does more service tonally to those type of chords than just piano, like keys, just plunk plunk. So I would like to hear, and I don't know what his other discography has that much, but I would like to hear more choral arrangements from Jacob.
He does a decent amount of that.
Yeah, okay. You'll have to send me some links or something.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, he's again, he kind of, I've never gone super down the rabbit hole other than I've watched a couple of lectures he's given and stuff like that. But
how old is he?
As far as I'm aware, again, his like start on YouTube was doing a lot of arrangements where it's like him playing like a bunch of shots of him playing multiple instruments and singing a bunch of vocal lines, arranging existing material.
Yeah, it's like that YouTube thing that used to be more popular than it is now, where it's like you have all the different boxes of, and it's all you, and you're playing the different instruments. There was like the guitar guy or something like that. I don't remember his channel. He was
Mystery Guitar Man.
That's the one. Who was really popular doing that. I mean, he had tons of subs, right? He had like millions of subscribers or whatever just doing that. So, there actually, the app that predated the app. So I don't know if a lot of people remember Musical.ly. But it used to be kind of for doing that, and then it kind of, no one uses it anymore because TikTok is just Musical.ly but better, but no one uses TikTok for that. But that is originally what that design philosophy was for, was just doing like self-arrangements and stuff.
Yeah.
It is coming back a little bit with the sea shanties. I don't know if you've heard about that, but sea shanties are really popular on TikTok right now. And people do like, there's one guy specifically
2021.
Yeah. Well, I think it has a lot
Hear
to
the
do
sea
with.
shanty.
I think it has a lot to do with because Adam Neely was saying this on Twitter. It has a lot to do with the fact that we're in lockdown and we're not seeing a lot of people and doing things where we're like kind of all doing the same thing and all singing along together feels really good to do, and we're just not capable of doing it that much, and that's why sea shanties are popping off on TikTok right now. Is because that's exactly what it is. I mean, it's a sing-along type of thing. So
That makes sense. It's pretty touching.
yeah, I put out a sea shanty TikTok yesterday. Has one like
at
so.
Havoc Labs.
Yeah,
TikTok.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. So that's what we want to hear from Jacob. Sea shanties. I bet he could do a really good sea shanty arrangement. Some of those actually, it's funny because some of those actually have really complex arrangements, and you hear like these like when you hear like actual choral groups do some of these like old songs, and they have these really crazy arrangements, and like I don't know, maybe that's just them flexing.
Probably a bit of that,
Yeah,
but
I don't know. I think
so
that.
I'm finally pulling up my notes.
Oh, good. Good.
No, go ahead.
I think that choral groups haven't been in vogue for a long time. I mean, aside from pentatonics. Hey, pentatonics is good. They're like, I should specify that they're like, I don't know, they're not as good. They're over hyped, but they are good, and I like some of their pop arrangements. But like, listen to the King's Singers. That's a great choral group. Go listen to the King's Singers. They do a lot of like folk songs and stuff, like British folk songs, not American folk songs, because they're the King's Singers. They're British. I mean,
Yeah. So, yeah. God, I have so many notes, and it's just so hard to, because like, I know, like, I can tell going through it, allowing myself to be like a tiny bit critical. I can tell in sections. What's impressive to me is that, like, from a sound design perspective, like he's successfully imitating and alloying with his own style these kind of, like, again, more electronic derived approaches to music, and he's got excellent sound design taste.
mm-hmm.
There are elements of the production that make it apparent that this is not engineered by somebody who primarily works in that sphere.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, I'm thinking on
So like the second song of the album,
like, yeah,
or the first
yeah,
one?
where it was like In My Bones, I think.
Yeah.
No, not In My Bones. No, it was the second.
Count the People.
Count the People, yeah. That, like, descending bass line thing, right? Sounds awesome, super tasty. A little lower in the mix than you would normally expect, and it doesn't sound as, like, huge
Yeah. Also,
as you would expect.
is that the song with the dubstep wobbles? Because that came out of nowhere for me. I was like, what the fuck? This is 2020. I mean, I'm not complaining.
Yeah.
But, like, I was like, Jacob, what are you doing? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, since, you know what
I
you're
dug
doing.
it.
You know what you're doing. It sounds good. It's just, if you did this wrong, that's a risk. If you do dubstep wobbles, if you do that effect and you do it wrong in a song in 2020, that kills your album. Like, that kills it. But it was good. It was good.
Yeah, I feel like he pulled it off pretty
Yeah,
well.
it was good.
I guess I listened to a fuck ton of that music, so.
Yeah.
So I'm a little more inclined to like it when I hear it. Because, yeah, admittedly, I did have that thought, though, that I'm like, this is interesting. This isn't, this seems like he's kind of pulling back to stuff that he, like, earlier electronic stuff that he listened to. I definitely agree. It has kind of a dated... it is a dated sound design ethos.
Yeah.
But still works super well.
Yeah. I think most of the things. I don't think there's many moments in the album where I don't think there's any moments where I hear something and I'm like, what the fuck? Like, I don't think there's any of that where I was like, this is fucking horrible, right? There are things that I would have done differently, but I'm not the Grammy nominated whatever.
And yeah, I'm almost sad that clearly my brain has not turned on enough, because what I would want to stress to like anyone watching is this is just an album worth listening to, period, because this is somebody I think at least quite successfully putting together a more pop and like R&B soul inflected album that still uses all sorts of interesting, like, just mind expanding pieces of musical vocabulary and approaches to harmony, right? And in that way, I think it's freeing in a way, in that this is somebody writing from a feeling place and using all of these techniques and loose timings, right? And it just works the whole damn time. And it takes a lot of artistry to make something that can be in places that organic and, like, more of an embodied groove, less of a machine, like, perfectly on a grid groove. But it's just, it's something that I think, just exposure to it will make you open up some possibilities in terms of, like, composition and rhythm arrangement that, like, it just feels like a good thing to have been exposed to. Again, for me, it's, it's really, really cool seeing that kind of, like, modulation that feels like it's usually executed in a way that's, like, placed front and center and just used as, like, a show, look at what I can do thing.
Right.
Hearing him use that intentionally and in a way that really serves the song, to me is, again, it's just, it's like a liberating album to listen to in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
And even the extent to which he's willing to use, like, very, very contrasting A part, B parts, and C parts, right? With, totally different vibes.
Yeah. Absolutely. I would say that,
like, on that opening track, Count the People, right? It feels like a pretty normal pop song, and then it goes to the, like, 2010s dubstep sound.
Right. Yeah.
And it works. It's tasty, it's cool, it's varied. And it kind of, seeing it work just makes you go, like, oh shit, I can do weird shit like that. And it can still sound good. You have to finesse it, but
yeah. No, yeah, in that way, yeah, I didn't think of it that way, but when you say it like that, I totally agree with you. I was gonna say that I thought of this based on what you were saying, that if you want to get into, like, the more weirder and experimental, like, styles with that kind of stuff, this would be a good starting point for someone. You know what I'm saying? Because it's executed so well, and it's put in there subtly. Like, this would be a good, like, first album to get into this kind of stuff, and then kind of work your way back to like understand it more pronouncedly.
Yeah, and it feels in many ways like this was really put up as an offering, right? As a like, look at what we can do in this. We can make music that still hits all of the like pop attuned sections of our brain, but still has all of this neat music nerd interest component to it as well.
Yeah.
And like the fact that he you know, in certain cases points directly to what he's doing, opening Time Alone with You with that, you know, him counting in the 2 3 4 5, like, so it's like, okay, he's establishing the drunk beat is like it's a quintuplet swing thing. Or what feels like a drunk beat is, you know, he's using a quintuplet groove to give it that like lurching feel.
Right. Absolutely. What song was that? Do you remember?
Time Alone with You.
Oh, that was Time Alone with You. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. See.
Yeah, I dig the hell out of that song.
There are a decent amount of like I can't remember in my brain all of the songs, but when I like start thinking about, there's like several songs where they have like these really catchy hooks or something that I am remembering the music, and I am remembering like specifically like what it sounded like. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, that was a really tasty sound, and okay, I remember that moment. It's not just, oh, those were some fun lyrics, right? But the lyrics are good enough and poppy enough, you know what I'm saying, where they're, like, sort of repetitive and they're sort of about general enough things where kind of anyone can relate to it. Like, Time Alone with You, right? Like, being alone with someone in a intimate way is something that I think most people can relate to, right? In some way, shape, or form. But then that specific lyric, it's like it plays on a chord, da 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 da, and I can't even, like, I can hear the chord in my brain, and it was a good chord. It's a good chord.
It's such a tasty chord.
Yeah.
And there's like, oh yeah. Again, he's using something with all of these really cool close dissonances, and I might have to pick up the goddamn score, the sheets for this album, just so I can kind of reverse engineer a lot of what he's doing.
Yeah.
In part because this is I'm reaching the limits of like what my ear can easily pick apart.
Yeah.
In a lot of places.
Especially when there's so many notes happening at once, it gets really difficult to, if it's not just like, oh, that's an A chord, right? Like, that's A major, do
major triad.
Like, okay, whatever. But like, yeah, when you're adding weird elements and stuff, and I feel this way when I listen to a lot of like neo soul or like just like contemporary jazz and stuff like that. I hear a chord and I'm like, what the fuck is that chord? Like, how do I make that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Your girl Kimbra is on this album.
Kimbra is on this album, on In My Bones. It's a fun track.
Yeah.
He's a pretty damn solid bassist. Again, like he played he's part of his whole, you know, he's a multi-instrumentalist, right? He's doing the Prince thing, he's doing the Reznor thing, what's the other? It's the Aussie guy. Fuck.
No, I was gonna say Damon Albarn from Gorillaz, because he plays all the.
Also Damon Albarn.
Yeah. Not quite the same. But...
Yeah, I forget the other guy, but yeah, he plays the vast majority of the instruments on the album. And yeah, I was continually impressed by a lot of the tight bass lines and licks throughout. Again, it's not like Thundercat is primarily a bassist, and it shows, right?
Right. Yeah, if you put Thundercat, I mean, I don't know what instruments that Thundercat could play. Like, I don't, like, but if you gave him, like, I don't know, some kind of weird percussion instrument or something, or, like, even, like, a keyboard, he wouldn't probably be able to play it as well as Jacob, but there's no way that, you know, Jacob could play bass like Thundercat, because that's his, yeah. I would like to hear them collab. That'd be great.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
Again, and the link between the two would be Ty Dolla $ign here.
That's true. Ty Dolla $ign was on both of these albums, dude. He's one of those feature artists. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's like his...
Yeah.
Because, like, name a Ty Dolla $ign song, I couldn't. But name a song that's good that has Ty Dolla $ign on it? There are lots.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm sure someone can tell me in the comments what's a good Ty Dolla $ign song, like his original song.
Yeah.
Go ahead. What you're gonna say?
Again, cool. Just more like harmony nerd stuff. I'd have to confirm it because I didn't sit out and work any of it out on the keyboard, but I'm pretty sure on All I Need, which again, according to other people's analysis, modulates between tunings of A. But also that the opening vamp is modulating, like between two kind of closely related keys. And you know, we're used to hearing, like, Radiohead kind of pioneered that, like, what if every chord was major, and that creates the feeling of modulation. But it's just neat hearing a pop song again, like, use the interplay between scales rather than just chords, to kind of create its vibe. Which again, I'm sure with as much pop music has been released, absolutely occurs elsewhere. But I think in general, it's just cool seeing somebody let their imagination go wild while still communicating in a more collectivized, more collectively comprehensible musical vocab, right? Using a lot of ideas that will still bring people in, make it accessible, but like just go and still feeling totally creatively unconfined. Which again, I suppose that's a message that feels more pertinent to me at a point where, like, I've felt so much pressure to, like, get myself thinking in terms of, like, other people's composition process. And that's useful as an exercise sometimes, just when you're in a rut. But, like, hearing somebody who's just clearly writing, like, okay, I hear a thing in my brain, and I make the thing that I hear in my brain. You know?
Yeah, and that's difficult. Not a lot of artists necessarily ever get there, where it's just pure flowing, whatever you want to communicate.
Yeah,
I think that's definitely the goal for me. I don't know. I can't speak for everyone.
Yeah. It's certainly like, if you can get that down, you can do anything.
Yeah.
It just becomes a matter of, like, you know, if you want to learn another style, you can just listen to it and then start churning out your own take, right? Rather than having to, like, sit there with a manual.
Yeah.
But
well, that's just pattern recognition. I mean, that's literally what that is. It's just you being able to hear it and then replicate it faster than it would take for other people to like memorize and, you know, whatever.
Yeah, but that active translation, again, I think also the term would probably just be musical fluency, right? That's actually an interesting, probably an interesting line to take, right? Realizing that it's kind of understood. We all kind of understand that music's a language. unto itself, right? And it's interesting that there is frequently this like a kind of divide between music nerds and non-music nerds, right? Like,
Absolutely.
I think in general people are getting better about being unpretentious about it, but for a while there it was pretty bad.
Uh,
And if we were to
it really depends on the genre, I think.
yeah, but for a while there, but you know, when we look at like writing,
Mm-hmm.
vocabulary isn't the only thing that we evaluate writing on the basis of, right?
Right.
Like, yeah, like, and for some people, like, flowery, ornate language is kind of a turnoff. It feels inaccessible. It feels right. And for other people, you know, people like me, I fucking gobble that shit up because I just love the weird combinations of sounds and the mechanics and like just the mouth feel of a bunch of different words, right?
Right,
And
like
I
some
think,
Shakespeare shit.
yeah, or just reading a lot of the like ridiculously linguistically complex shit that like Urbanomic tends to publish a lot. And realizing like music functions much the same way, right? Like we would like Hemingway wasn't known for purple prose, but like people still find Hemingway's writing very, very effective. You know, and it's weird to compare like and we would probably be willing to say that both Hemingway and H.P. Lovecraft had something worthwhile going on. They were also both pretty objectionable, believed and advocated a lot of really objectionable shit. So, disclaimer there. But as writers, they were both pretty good at expressing what they were trying to express, and that necessitated different vocabularies, different approaches to even the arrangement of words, the outlining, the way in which a plot was delivered, right?
Right.
And I think just because we don't like, it's fascinating that we don't draw that comparison more, I suppose. Because again, like here, what I'm getting to is basically just saying that Jacob Collier writes like somebody who loves language, loves the language they speak.
Right.
And is pulling all of these different esoteric like words. But the really cool thing about music is that in general, you don't have to know the composition. You don't know how to spell. You don't have to know how to spell a word to be able to use it. And that's true in spoken language as well. But you don't have to understand the theoretical components of it to know how it feels.
Right. That's true.
It's much more immediate.
That's true.
And there will be, you know, just everyone's associations with certain sounds, chords, intervals, right, will be different based on the music they've been exposed to and the way they've heard certain words, for lack of a better term, used. But yeah, he's reached a level of fluency. It's almost like it's like the maturation of an artist. You know, when we point to people who are being technical for the sake of being technical, it's kind of like when you know you've got the kid who like reads a bunch of literature and likes going through the dictionary, and like everything they write is just sprinkled with all of these like $5 and $20 SAT words just for the sake of having them in there, right?
It's like 50 Shades of Grey. I don't know if you've ever read 50 Shades of Grey, but it legitimately reads like a thesaurus. Like, oh my god.
Yeah, well, you can tell where she's like, I want a better word.
yeah. And she doesn't quite understand the meaning of the word. Yeah.
And I think maturing as a composer you tend to follow the same track. Like knowing that the word exists and being able to use it artfully and intentionally, and that's something Jacob talks about a lot in his speeches, right? Is saying like there are no rules really in harmony. It's just about making things intentional.
Right.
Making sure that what's being included is communicating something and isn't just there to be there. I'm probably paraphrasing horribly, but it was a good talk.
Yeah, no, I agree with the sentiment. I think, especially if we look at, like, there are certain genres. I think progressive rock, great example. Sometimes they're overly verbose just for the sake of it, just for the sake of sounding smart or whatever. And there's definitely an audience for that, for sure. But when we're talking about being translatable in a way that people can really understand, having intent behind everything and just purely being intent as opposed to anything else is more impactful generally. Yeah.
And connecting, because you mentioned Shakespeare, like realizing like that's another, the music in language is another thing. The two disciplines have a hell of a lot in common. Again, there's an excellent Adam Neely video in which he talks about the fact that like rhythms in speech, common rhythms in speech tend to crop up in music.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I watched that video.
Like
that's like the clave rhythm. Yeah, that.
Yeah. Which is a lot of words like mañana, consuelo, right?
Yeah, that.
In Spanish.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we have, in English we have a lot of Scotch snaps. The da 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 da.
Yeah.
That's yeah. So common rhythms in speech tend to replicate themselves in music, and when you look at somebody like Shakespeare with iambic pentameter, you can get away with all of this interesting vocabulary by manipulating the rhythms and flow and feel of speech such that a word, sheerly by virtue of its texture, becomes more comprehensible and evocative. That's again a lot of the stuff that I'm reading right now is like the sort of thing I'm finally encountering stuff where I'm like, wow, these people are using a lot of words that I have to reach for a dictionary for, but the flow and feel of the language is such that it's not annoying.
Right.
I mean, and it also doesn't feel like it's just they're using those words for the sake of using them, right? They're using them as much because of the way they feel,
right,
as because of what they mean, right?
Even down to the simplest, like the feeling that when you have like A, B, like you need to have rhyming schemes in your songs for them to sound good. Simply for the fact that you may make the same mouth shape when you're singing like words, and so it would be weird if it ended on an and then it ended on a like a ah after that, right? It would sound weird. It wouldn't be as coherent. And I think that's the most like simplified form that I can think of, but
yeah. And drawing a further analogy between language, poetry, and music here, I think again what's cool about what Collier is doing here is if we only ever wrote poetry or books the way we're taught to use language in school, like so much cool writing wouldn't exist. Chuck Palahniuk's writing would be hamstrung. E.E. Cummings' poetry, which is so much like about the arrangement of words on the page, would never exist.
And we would never have Rupi Kapoor. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Never mind. Continue.
Or yeah, Ruby Carr. I forget the name, the last name, but and again, a lot of what Jacob's doing here is this cool sleight of hand of like using a lot of the words and ideas and mouthfeel of pop, while breaking from the grammar, breaking from the rules about how it's supposed to be arranged and set up and segued, you know, and it's experimental. You know, it's modifying the structure while preserving a lot of the core ideas. And then also, again, throwing in the just lush harmonies and super tight bass lines.
Yeah.
And yeah, lots of just interesting ear candy.
Yeah.
But
and okay, so I will say, like, one of the first negative things that we have said about sometimes it is just ear candy.
yeah.
Like, it doesn't always benefit the song to have it there, right? Like, it doesn't actually do anything for the song necessarily. Like, sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. I'm just gonna say that not 100% of the time does it. It's not like so masterfully crafted where every thread has, you know, a very explicit purpose that leads to some kind of grand picture, right? It is more humble than that. But that's okay.
More organic, I think, is kind of the word that really, like, that I think describes just the vast majority of Jacob's music. It is funny, in the same lecture that I'm referencing, he makes a joke about, you know, hitting the quantize button and thereby robbing the music of any ounce of soul it might have possessed. And I actually, that's something I totally disagree with him on.
Right.
I think quantization, or rather, soullessness is a concept that is worth expressing too. Right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. But again, for him, there is so much of this organic, living quality to the music that I think, in many cases, it's less intentional than it is spontaneous. It is something that, like, it's like a lot of the bass lines and licks and huge vocal runs, right? Those don't have like a specific meaning other than being this expression of joy or emotion, right? Expressed in these in these very fluid runs. And yeah, I think there's plenty of stuff that went in there just because it felt good, not because it was conceptually, not because it was supposed to be saying something specific.
Right.
But it felt right there.
Yeah. Yeah. And Jacob needs to learn, there's this little plugin, it's called a humanizer. A lot of like EDM and
I think he's good enough at playing all the lines himself that he just doesn't need it.
No, I'm just saying that, like, you can quantize it and it sucks all the soul out, and then you humanize it and it puts the soul back in.
See, I have a whole ramble I could go on about that, but I'm going to wait until I have more of my own music released, because I have thoughts.
Yeah.
But I will preserve them until I have a piece of media to accompany those thoughts.
That's fine. Let's go. More notes. I didn't take that many. I just haven't been in the last couple months in a note-taking mood. Actually, no, we've already gone. Oh, aside from in the very intro track, Clarity, he uses a lot of stock sound effects that I recognize from other things, and I just thought it was funny.
Funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably like just bundled with Logic.
Or something, yeah. Like, I mean, getting stock sound effects is not difficult or expensive. I mean, it depends on what libraries you're going to and stuff. If any stock libraries want to sponsor us,
You'll use your stuff.
Well, and more than just use it, I'll be like, hey, this would be a good, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's the only note that I took that we haven't covered so far.
Yeah. And that is yeah, I think you and I are both pretty major sound design geeks, and that's one of the only areas in which that's one of the areas Jacob hasn't gone so much into, right? Like he did a good job of creating some, like early 2010s era dubstep patches and sounds, but like, yeah, he's much more about expressing himself in vocal arrangements than in like the shaping of individual sounds.
Right.
Which, yeah, if you're a big sound design nerd, there's still some tasty, cool stuff going on here, but that's not really the point.
Right. Yeah, I would say, in terms of sound design, it's not very deep. It's good, and it definitely serves the function that it's supposed to. But yeah, you're not gonna get anything crazy out of it.
It mostly just gets out of the way.
Yeah. Like a lot of,
and he does. I mean, yeah, he has cool little experimental noisy breaks and with like chopped up vocal samples and stuff. But yeah, it's not.
It's pretty standard genre.
Tweaking a synth patch.
Right. Right. Absolutely.
Or like working in pure data, trying to. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. I mean, you only have so much time. When you can play like 25 different instruments, if you're also good at EQ, fuck you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, do you have any more notes?
What is just the one sound design note that I did have in Too Deep, there's a synth pad in there, and in general just he's using like an 808 kick and a lot of like little trap hats, and he did a pretty damn good job there. He uses a very, very subdued synth patch that's playing what I assume are that are playing good chords in the background, but it's just textural, right? It's not super. So there are a couple little moments there where I'm like, ooh, good choice. Well done. Synth pads are just hard to get right.
Yeah. Yeah. What I always do is layer like 3 of them on top of each other. As long as, they're following the same pattern and stuff. If they're super noisy, that would be too much, but I like to layer synth pads so it's a more complex sound. It's harder to parse out the like weird MIDI aspects of it.
Yeah.
Nah, that's just me personally. I don't know how long have we been going.
A little over an hour.
A little over an hour. Cool. We can do ratings. Unless you have anything else.
Nope. More than anything, I just would really, really stress that this is just go listen to it.
Yeah.
I feel like my notes and my unpacking, and I realize it's the sort of thing where describing a sunset to somebody is not really gonna achieve the same effect. So no matter what kind of criticism I tried to engage in here, or like what kind of unpacking I tried to engage in here, it's not going to compare to just listening to it. So
yeah,
go check it out. It does lots of cool stuff. Also check out It Is What It Is.
Yeah.
That was also a very good, very These were both very comfy albums, I think.
That's true.
This one's, and both melancholy.
Yeah.
In a lot of places. Thundercat, I think It Is What It Is had more of like it was like a melancholy with just kind of like a wry smile, though.
Yeah.
He seems a little more, there's a little more of a sardonic, quality to it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Doesn't take, I guess, yeah, he's got much more of a comedy sensibility, right?
Yeah, he's having fun with it. Even when he's having a bad time, he's having fun with it. He's not necessarily taking himself seriously. Yeah, which is that's definitely one of the, like, that's definitely a very appealing aspect of Thundercat, I think, is, aside from the great bass playing, it's like, you know, his sort of personality.
Yeah.
All right. Ratings. You should go first.
Okay. Listenability. Yeah, I'll give it like, kind of hard. I want to say like an 8.8, 8.9, because 9 feels very, very high.
Mm-hmm.
And it isn't the sort of thing that I could just listen to on repeat forever.
Right.
Because there's a lot going on. But in general, it just feels good to listen to. And it feels good in the background, and it feels good when you pay attention, and it's impressive that it can do both. That, yeah, it rewards that it is well designed texturally enough that you can put it on in the background, and then it also rewards closer attention. It's just really neat. So yeah, fuck it, I'll knock it up to a 9.
Ta-da. That's high for listenability.
Weird factor. Yeah, I know. I don't think I've given like anything that.
I might have given something. I don't remember. Anyway.
I guess maybe the only, like, it's super high listenability. It's almost like, I realize it's the sort of thing that I have the same relationship to that I have, like, games and books that I feel like I should be reading because I know they're good, where I'm like, literally the only thing that would keep me from doing this is feeling like I'm not in a position where I can pay enough attention to get the most value from it.
Yeah.
Which is a me problem, not, it's something I'm working to get over this year so that I can actually get through a lot of the things that I've been wanting to get through. Instead of getting performance anxiety for the act of fucking reading or listening to music. But anyway.
Yeah.
It's not bad, dude.
No, I get it.
I mean, in my defense, I've been hella vitamin D deficient and dealing with food allergies that like have put me in a state of constant brain fog. So I think I was a little bit right to feel like maybe I wasn't with it enough.
Yeah, I think calling it performance anxiety is too harsh on yourself, but that's why I laughed, because the idea of I don't know.
Yeah, but. Point being, something I'm working to get over this year, particularly now that I'm working out some of my health stuff in the background. Weird factor. Like 7. I mean, it's as it listened to as a pop album. It would be much higher because he's doing a lot of stuff that is just very outside of the established vocab and grammar rules for pop. At the same time, though, the fact that he's moving more into that overt pop composition mode contrasted against his previous work also gives it weird points. So maybe I should put it higher, but at the same time, weird factor feels like it indicates something.
He's
Go ahead.
normalizing himself, you know? Like, he is, I don't know, an
And
indication.
I think, yeah, softening,
Mm.
right? Roughing, like, again, he's working from this like comfortable, inviting feeling place, and I feel like weird factor, as I think of it, it tends to refer to things that are like abrasive and super attention getting. Things that make you go, that's weird, that's strange. And a lot
Mm-hmm.
of the weirdness here is subtle and so seamlessly integrated that it doesn't grab your attention as being weird.
Yeah.
So it's like a weird factor rating in flux, and that I say it doesn't feel weird, and yet it is under the surface. So the superficial weird factor I'll put at 7, and perhaps the actual weird factor I will put closer to like an 8.5 or 9. Because he's getting away with so much. And again, I can 100%, I can already hear, you know, and for the record, like I listen to a lot of neo soul stuff, so I know that none of that, what he's doing here is stuff that other people have done, right?
Right.
But the fact that he's smuggling these into a pop format again is what's really impressive to me.
Right.
Yeah, and he would make no bones about the fact that he owes a tremendous artistic debt to like just an innumerable number of musicians. Cohesion. It works well as an album. The vibe is pretty similar, you know, in that it's very much an album about relationships and, you know, the struggle of remaining oneself while in relationship. But at the same time, yeah, there aren't like smooth transitions between most or like any of the songs.
Yeah.
They're not like consciously segued into one another. And again, like I love the really contrasting A parts, B parts, C parts in a lot of these songs, but at the same time, those represent like jumps and leaps into different emotional spaces, which gives it works, but I don't know that it's necessarily what we would call cohesive in the conventional sense. So like it's kind of all over the place in a way that works super well, but is still kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
Even if the vibe is consistent throughout. So for cohesion, I'll give it like, I feel like everything I just said kind of cancels. They're all mutually canceling. So I'll give it like a 5.
That's fair, right in the middle.
Yeah, because the vibe is consistent. It feels like I do not in any way object to just letting it play.
Right.
But the pieces are at the same time all pretty self-contained. And even internally have a lot of jumps between bases and ideas that are pretty dramatic leaps in cases. Which again works, but feels like a noticeable transition.
Right. Yeah.
And lastly, musicianship, fucking yeah, 9. Performances from everyone on this album, everyone he collaborated with, all of his instrumentalists, everything that he played, like yeah, it's just everyone's A, having an awesome time, and B, doing an excellent job. So yeah, I realize the only reason I don't give it a 10 is because I just feel like I'm not supposed to give out 10s.
You can give it a 10 if you feel like it is as good as it could be.
I'll put it. Oh, fucking A, man. Am I gonna give out my first 10 in anything?
I don't know.
Yeah. I'll give the musicianship on this one a 10.
Nice. There you go.
And that's for everyone. That's for everyone that he worked with on this album, as well as him, obviously.
Nice.
Yep, so that's me.
All right. I agree. I like have listenability. I'm gonna give it a 7.5. I don't think it's quite as listenable as you said, but I still think it is. Musicianship, I'm gonna give it a 9, not a 10. I don't know. That's just the number that I had in my head. And I don't know. It's not like perfect. I don't know. I kind of like showmanship. And not that this doesn't have it, but I don't know. Weird factor 6, I think. Because all the different things are things that exist separately. They're just kind of combined together. It doesn't sound... It's not off-putting in any way. But he is doing them in a way that is different than the way that most people do it. So it is a little bit weird, but not, like, weird. And then... album cohesion, I will agree with you. It's like a 5. It's sort of in the middle. It's not that it doesn't exist, but it's definitely not a priority of the album in any way. Which is fine. That's totally cool. So overall, what's it gonna be, Sam? What's your overall?
I'll give it a 9.
Nice. That's
In
pretty
that,
high.
to me, I think, regardless of any misgivings I have about feeling like I can pay close enough attention, I feel like this album will always reward listening.
Yeah.
In some way. Just because there's so much that it does well, and so many it's so many musical possibilities that it showcases, that it's always going to be worth returning to, even if it's not something that I'm going to have playing as the soundtrack to my life, right?
Right.
Because again, I think, in terms of ethos and in terms of like general worldview, there are considerable differences between the way Jacob Collier looks at the world and the way I do. So his world is not the one that I feel like underscores my life. It works as a soundtrack to my life. But again, it's just an inspiring and just totally creatively liberated album. So,
yeah, absolutely. 9. I'd like to hear what is the soundtrack to your life. Cannibal Corpse, maybe?
No.
I'm gonna... What did I give Thundercat? I think it was an 8.5. I'm gonna give this an 8. I liked it. I really did. Okay, so the first time I listened to it, it was like 1 a.m. and the pop music annoyed me, so I would have given it a 6. But when I listened to it again this morning, I liked it a lot more. So, if that says anything.
Yeah.
So yeah, 8. Yeah, good album. We'll have to do a dive back into his back catalog at some point. We're gonna... I want some kind of, like... I need some kind of inspiration for 2021 of what kind of albums we want to pick. I want to do something either crazy... Like, we've done a lot of, like, actual normal albums recently. And, like, in a row. Yeah. I think next week we need to do something fucking crazy.
I feel like the theme for 2021 should be like alternate reality albums.
Ooh.
Just pick things that have enough of an identity and create enough of a perceived space that a perceived alternative space to the one we regularly occupy that feels like a departure.
I have okay, I actually know what album I'm gonna do next week. When you said that, when you're talking about making you feel very, and then I have another one that we could do after that too. But anyway, making you feel a very specific feeling that is alien to your own experience, but very much so you experience it through the music. And it feels very real and very human, and you know, it's not. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Well, thanks for tuning in. Like, subscribe, follow, do all the things. Do all the things. We love you. Have a nice day. Be safe. Get vaccinated. Yeah. You know. There's a... Wait, okay. I'm trying to remember the country. Hold on. It's Uganda is having a blackout right now. The government has completely gotten rid of the internet in Uganda because there's a lot of like riots and shit going on, and they don't want people tweeting about it. So there's some awareness. I was like, I need to say something. Yeah. I need to spread some awareness. That is, you know, something that's going on in the world right now. So, I don't know what we could do to help, but
anyone positioned to provide assistance to the people of Uganda, please do so. Everyone else, I guess.
Thoughts and prayers.
As defeat as it feels, send good vibes. Keep them in your thoughts. Stay aware.
Yeah.
Let people know that the world is paying attention.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. All right. Adios.